You got the contract. You nailed it down and you figured out where you're gonna stay because you watched the housing video. Now it's time to actually start the job. And you're starting to freak out a little bit. Jumping into a completely different hospital with a whole new set of people and a way of doing things is nerve-wracking, and it's totally okay to admit that. Today, I've got some tips for you from an experienced travel nurse on how you can have first day finesse. Hi, I'm John. I've been doing this travel nurse gig now for quite some time. It's been a blast. My family and I have come with me as we have traveled all over the United States, having major adventures all over the place. We've been excited to bring this series to you all about travel nursing, and today we're really talking about the first day, maybe the first week, and how all that's gonna go for you. Nerves are a totally acceptable common practice here, even for experienced travel nurses like myself. Starting that new job and wondering how it's gonna go and wanting to make a good first impression are all normal concerns that we all have. You've got things in your head like, how am I gonna know what to do? What is it they're gonna want from me? What if things get screwed up and where do I even go? Let's break it down in a timeline order and give you some very good advice from the get-go. Before the first day, start to get familiar with the area. Like my beautiful wife said in the last video, it's good to get there like a week early. Sometimes you might be able to pull off like a couple of days before the contract starts, but our advice is 1, maybe even up to 2 weeks early to just explore the surroundings. You're going to want to figure out where things are, like the grocery store, the laundromat, the gym, restaurants, places to eat. What about green spaces? Maybe a bar. And like UPS or some sort of mail system, you can get all that worked out and settle down before you actually even start your job. Obviously, the hospital. Take some time to drive around the campus, especially if it's one of those bigger ones at a very large facility where there's multiple buildings. You may even have an area where there's multiple hospitals. I had one of those up in Worcester, Massachusetts, where there was 2 different campuses. I went to one day for orientation, and a completely different one was where I was going to be working. You actually can set foot in the hospital before your start date and just walk into the main lobby. You can ask around on where you're supposed to park as a new traveler, or where the unit is that you're going to be working. I don't know if I would go up onto the unit and explore that far in, but you can always ask like a volunteer at the front desk of the main entrance, hey, where is 2 West, or where is 4W? Keep in mind that most of the time for orientation, you're not going to be going to the unit right off the bat. There's probably going to be some classroom type stuff that you're going to do first. It's also always good, even before doing that kind of stuff, to take some time to learn what you can about the hospital and maybe even the unit that you're going to be working on. You can do some investigating, like on Facebook. Go and look up, see if there's some groups for that hospital or maybe even for that unit. Some of them are closed groups, but some of them are open too, and you can find them. You can post questions and look for reviews on things like Travel Nursing Newbies or other nursing forums. You can also search for things on YouTube like hospital reviews and stuff like that from other travel nurses. I know I post a review for every hospital that I've ever worked at. Email is the main way that everybody is going to communicate with you about this entire contract. You're going to receive email from a multitude of different people when you start. Look for stuff certainly coming from your recruiter and from other people in your agency, maybe compliance, things like that. So keep an eye on your email, check it daily, maybe even multiple times a day as you draw closer to the actual start date. You're going to receive emails from the manager or maybe the unit educator or somebody from the hospital that are going to give you things like links to the modules that you're going to need to complete beforehand. So the recruiter's going to send you first day instructions, or they may call it something different, but essentially what that's going to be is things to like heads up. They're going to want you to come this day for orientation. You're going to go to this place and watch for them. It might have things like scrub color and things like that that hopefully you already know about. Then there's going to be the manager or whoever the contact person is from the hospital. And sometimes this can be 1 or 2 people or 3 people. It just depends on who's choosing to email you that day. I've gotten emails from managers, assistant managers, educators, and even the director sent me a welcome email at one contract. So it could be from a couple of different folks, and they're all going to have stuff that's probably important. Remember a few videos back where I talked about keeping digital copies of everything on your drive or whatever it is that you're using to keep all that stuff? This is where you're going to save all that communication. I know it might be simple to think like, I don't have to really save all these emails. Trust me, it's not a bad thing, and they're not going to take up too much space on the drive. Save them. The basic takeaway from all of that is check the email often. Modules. Let's talk about modules. Everybody knows what I mean by this. These are the assigned online learning stuff that you have to do for the hospital. Things like their OSHA and HOSA and compliance and all that kind of stuff. Every hospital has these. You're going to do it every single time you have a new contract. It should not feel too different because as a staff nurse, you had to do all of this stuff when you onboarded at the job that you're working at before travel nursing. And most of us skip to the point where we get to the end where the test is because most of us can just take the test without having to read and listen to the entire module. Whether or not that's right is another story. The modules are going to be time consuming and they are going to be annoying, but they do need to be completed. Now, you can ask your recruiter if they're willing to reimburse you for that time. I know as a staff nurse, there's some leeway there. You know, you kind of have time, you can hem-haw around it a little bit, not in the travel nurse world. If these modules are not done by the time you show up on that very first day, there will be problems and it can delay the entire start date and move everything back 1 or sometimes even 2 to 3 weeks. It depends on when the hospital has these orientation things and when you can start. So just make sure that they're done before day 1. That is very important. Generally speaking, there's going to be a period of orientation and it's usually like a day or 2. And it will consist of filling out paperwork. If you have not had a specific class on the type of charting system that they use, such as Cerner or Epic or Meditech, then they will put you in a very condensed version of that type of class for travel nurses. Some places may have you start almost right off the bat. You just go right to the unit you're gonna be working on and you may have like an hour or 2 paired with another nurse who shows you around. You may have a manager that takes a little bit of time to show you around and then you truly hit the ground running, starting right off with an assignment. That doesn't happen too often. I would say maybe 1 in every like 10 contracts I've run into where that happens. Like I said before, figure out where you're gonna park before that first day. You do not want to be the travel nurse that shows up late on orientation. Everyone will judge you. Make sure that you're properly caffeinated if you're like me and you need to be in order to like stay awake and function. Just do whatever your normal typical morning routine is. Just plan on starting it earlier so that you have time for if things get a little wonky or a little wrong or you can't find the right conference room or you go to the wrong campus or something like that. Just build that time into when you are going to show up and arrive. Things are going to be difficult to find at first if you've never been there, and oftentimes things change even from what you were sent. A travel nurse is a flexible person by nature, so you need to exhibit that flexibility on day 1. You can wear scrubs on orientation days. You can wear business casual. There are always some people that do so. Generally speaking, those are the brand new travelers. We can all tell, but no one cares. It's also very important for you to bring a folder or something with you that maybe has a legal pad in it where you can take notes and have copies of all the things that you may need going forward. Have all of that there. If they ask for it, they should have already had it from compliance, but just hand them the copy anyway because you came prepared. And you can also save the paperwork that they give you, which are going to scan in to your drive to keep track of everything. Also, write down the contact information for the manager or the educator or the scheduler or anybody else that you think you might need to get a hold of. It's good to have their name and their phone number and email address all kind of right there for you so that you can remember later. My advice, take a picture of it, scan it to your drive. Tests. We've got to talk about it. This is everybody's type nightmare situation. I know a lot of travel nurses who are really scared of this, and I even know some people that would like to do travel nursing that don't do it because they have test anxiety and this is bad enough that they don't even want to put up the risk of it. But tests are a reality on first day orientation type stuff. Don't be too nervous about this. Just do your best to kind of prepare for them. Most of the time, they are not difficult. It's basic nurse type stuff. If you've been a nurse long enough to be a good travel nurse, which I say is like a 2-year recommendation, then you should know and be able to answer most of these questions. You may not get 100%, that's okay. Most of the passing rate is like 80, so you should be fine. If you work in critical care or telemetry or a progressive care unit, a step down, something like that, Be ready for a rhythm strip test. They're gonna wanna know that you know what VTAC and all these other things look like that are lethal rhythms, so expect that. If you're not real good on blocks, then take some time to study them right before you go in so that you feel a little more confident. There's also gonna be like general, just basic nursing type questions about certain things like isolation policies and stuff like that. You can also expect to maybe do 1 or 2 drug calculation tests. So if you're not real confident with those, take a little bit of time beforehand to study them up before that first day. Even if in all of your first day instructions, it doesn't mention anything about testing, it's still probably not a bad idea to kind of refresh anything in your mind if you're worried about it. Don't sweat it, you guys, just do your best. Finally made it to the unit. There are usually a couple of ways that unit day orientations can actually go. You might have a preceptee that's gonna work with you and show you where things are for a little bit. Remember, a travel nurse is hired for their ability to hit the ground running, so it is something that they're going to be expected of you. The nursing does not change. How you interact with your patients, the way that you administer medications, those things are the same across the entire spectrum of nursing for this entire country. Focus on that. How you call people, how you page physicians, who's what doctors, when rounds happen, all that kind of stuff is all secondary. One thing you can do is try to find a buddy that can help you figure these things out on the way. Oftentimes, it's another travel nurse that's been there for a month or so long before, and they already have got it down. And the nice thing about it is they feel your pain because they went through it too, and they'll help you get through it. And eventually, by the end of your contract, you'll probably have the opportunity to do the same. All right, let's talk about problems. If you get to your contract and you find out that maybe it's not what you thought it was gonna be, maybe you're working on a different unit that you thought, maybe you signed up for ICU and you find out this is a step down or this is a tele unit or something like that. Maybe you thought it was gonna be 1 to 2 patients, but you have 4 patients. You thought you were gonna be working day shift and you're working night shift instead. First things first, call your recruiter. Go ahead and see if you can make it through the first day. Now, this means, yeah, it might be annoying. You may have a tough time, but try to get it through the first day so that people have time to sort it all out. Don't throw a huge hissy fit. Don't be that travel nurse. They're gonna try to work things out for you. That's the way that it should go. Remember, you still wanna be flexible, but you also wanna be firm and don't let them push you into a situation where you're really uncomfortable or you're potentially putting your patients in danger. It is rare, but it's often talked about in the forums, so it gets brought up a lot because we all like to talk about drama. Most of the time, they can fix it or figure it out. The hospital is usually the culprit for screwing it up, so the hospital will have to figure out how to make it work. They can cancel the contract, but that's what we're all trying to avoid here. So do your best to try to work with them and work it out instead of having the contract canceled. Final tips here. We all are guilty of this, but do not talk about how much money you are or are not making on this contract. The likelihood is that you're probably making more money than even their most experienced nurses are. So don't blab about it. Don't like flaunt it in front of everybody. It's just bad form. And lastly, expect to take at least a full month of work before you start to figure out how this whole process is going to work with this hospital. And by the 3rd month, when it's almost over, is when you finally feel like you've got it all figured out. And then it's time to start the next contract. So stick around and I'll see you then.